Good morning. I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know about a few things that are going on if you haven't noticed that already. Tomorrow I'm going to be introducing a bill, 42-16, that will create a new property tax credit for our residents who are at least 65 years old. The caveat is that they have to have lived in the same dwelling for at least 40 years. But retired members of the U.S. Armed Forces who are at least 65 years old would also be eligible for the credit, and they would not be subject to that restriction. Another thing, of course, there's a lot of talk about the Bethesda Downtown Sector Plan. We're about to commence on public hearings. We'll have 3 nights of hearings. We'll see how late people want to stay on Wednesday night. There's a big thing happening nationally that night, but we will have an overview of the plan on Tuesday, about 11:45. Another really important thing that we're getting a briefing on tomorrow are some new HUD rules under the Fair Housing Law. It's called Rules Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. There was a case in Long Island where a community denied some application for affordable housing because it was out of character with the nature of the community. And when I read about that, I was concerned about what it meant for Montgomery County. So we will be getting a briefing on that issue tomorrow. Apparently, HUD has gotten more aggressive about how it ensures that its dollars are spent to achieve more affordable housing in various localities. Another thing that's been getting a lot of attention are small cell phone antennae. Based on community reaction to the legislation I introduced last summer, we had a public hearing in July, but we've had a lot of questions and comments and concerns about that legislation. So we're having a public forum on Wednesday the 26th. It's going to be at Ridgeview Middle School, and it's going to, and we'll have a conversation. We'll have some experts there to talk about this issue of the installation of small cell antennas and poles in public rights-of-way. Right now, those can go as a matter of right on Pepco poles. So this really comes up in communities where the utilities are already undergrounded, so there aren't so many of those big Pepco poles. The thought on the table is to permit their installation on county light poles, but they would have to be replaced with stronger poles to support these systems. And so communities are concerned about all of that. What's interesting about this is that our hands are tied to a certain degree. Most people's concerns have to do with safety issues associated with the RF system, the radiation, and that is not something that we're allowed, local jurisdictions are allowed to get into under the FCC rules. There are a variety of other rules that apply to local jurisdictions that we have to be sensitive to as well. But there'll be hopefully a good public exchange on this subject on October 26th. One thing that is important to emphasize, I've been reminded this does not apply to certain municipalities. And I'll read off the list. If those folks from those municipalities would not be affected by this conversation. That's folks who live in Brookville, Poolsville, Laytonsville, Rockville, Barnesville, Gaithersburg, and Washington Grove. Those are communities that have their own control over this. Rockville. Did I not say that? But I meant to, okay. Yes. Rockville residents and Gaithersburg residents. These are the largest communities, and they're going through their own challenge of how to address this issue. But we won't get into that. We just recently, some of you may have noticed this, we did send out a letter. Both myself, County Executive Leggett, the County Executive for Frederick County, and the Council President from Frederick County. It's really a historic first. We sent out a letter recently asking the Governor to allocate funds to reopening the environmental impact study for I-270. This is the big picture issue. How do we really get to true fixes to the I-270 congestion issues? This is a piece of work that had been underway when I first ran for office in 2002. It ultimately, the study actually got shelved around 2009. The county, we here in the county council had weighed in as to what we supported going forward, reversible lanes down 270. But for whatever reason, work on that initiative had ceased at the state level. So this is an effort, a really historic first for us counties working together to get this project funded in the county, in the governor's capital budget, or the planning budget, so we can get to some important decisions on I-270. Of course, we haven't heard back yet. We'll see what happens. Likewise, we here in the council are introducing a resolution to support the restoration of state funding for the Corridor Cities Transitway. That's money for that. That's a Montgomery County Transitway project that had money in the state budget, but this time around it has been removed. So we are really concerned about that, and we do hope that that money will be restored. And I have, I think, copies of that letter. This is the one to Governor Hogan, and there's another one. This is the resolution on the Corridor Cities Transitway that we're introducing tomorrow. And on the subject of letters, we've also, as a council, have sent a joint letter to the FAA asking it to take a more aggressive review of the DC flight path noise issue. And I think we have a copy of that letter, too. Is that right? This is the one going to Michael Harris. So we're doing what we can on these issues. A lot of them are out of our personal hands, but we really are concerned about implications of these decisions, both at the state and federal levels, what they mean for our residents. Another great thing that we did actually last week was I was part of a memorandum of understanding signing over in White Oak. I joined representatives from the government of Telangana, India, and the IV2 Alliance. That's all part of the Viva White Oak initiative. As they signed a memorandum of understanding, this is intended to advance regulatory science and biomedical innovation in the East County with the Global Life Sci Development Corporation. IV2 Alliance is a Maryland nonprofit. Its mission is to collaborate with the FDA as part of its efforts to create new products, policies, and procedures that promote and advance global public health. The FDA is really excited about this. You know, the FDA is basically the gold standard for public health across the world. And it's very interested in partnering with international, in the international environment so that we can get some good standardized products out to everyone. And so it was really very interesting to see this, and I think it's a really important first step in seeing the beginning of the fulfillment of the promise of White Oak. There's a lot. It's still going to be a good long time, I think, before we see a shovel in the ground, but nonetheless, we are seeing some really important agreements between major players in terms of their commitment to advancing relationships, and we expect this to be very fruitful in terms of some locational decisions that will be on the table. Nothing's certain yet, but you've got to get started, and we're getting started in that regard. So that is really what I was going to talk about. I know that another interesting issue that came up last week, we haven't gotten engaged yet, is a proposal for a regional tax to support Metro. We understand there was a meeting between the governors and Mayor Bowser last week on this issue. It's symptomatic of the fact that there's not sufficient funds to keep the Metro system alive, I think, and the question is, who's going to pay? We're going to have to increase fares. Are we going to bite the bullet and find a rational and predictable approach to Metro funding? We shall see what happens. The council, I don't know if we'll be asked to take a position on it or not. I suspect we would support that because we are all here collectively concerned about the future of Metro. I believe Metro is about the only place in the country that doesn't have some kind of reliable long-term funding source for its transit system. And I think it's unfortunate, and I think this issue with Safe Track and the hours of operation and all the kinds of things that are in people's minds right now warrant us giving this some very serious thought. Had a friend who went to the unfortunate Nationals game the other day and ended up getting home at 3 in the morning because of the traffic jams that resulted after the game. That's the kind of experience our residents are going to be stuck with if we don't face reality, if you ask me. So that's a few things. Any questions?
On your bill, you say they have to be in the house for 40 years. Something like a reverse mortgage or something isn't going to affect that. It's just them actually residing in the building.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they still have to pay the property tax.
Right.
That's the issue.
Do you have any idea how many people that might affect?
I don't know that work has been done.
No, we haven't.
I don't think it's a huge number, but for those folks who have been committed to Montgomery County, we'd like to find a way to support their efforts to remain here. It would also, the homes involved, I think the bill provides that they have to be valued at $500,000 or less. So it's it's not the largest proportion of our community, but it is it's for people really of living in an affordable environment. We'd like to make sure that they can stay with us.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the election? Are you planning to vote early?
I can't wait. I can't wait to vote. I've been up to Pennsylvania several times, and I will be going up, of course, my personal time, going up there the weekend before the election to help get the vote out up there. Very exciting time, isn't it?
How important is it that voters in Montgomery County vote early with the onslaught of voters they're expecting on election?
I would really encourage that. That's a really important point. And another thing to get out there is that you can register if you go to vote when you go to vote early at the different voting centers. So that's important for people to know if they're American, United States citizen, if they have something that identifies where they live, they can register, and they have to be 18 or over. They can register to vote on that day. It's a little understood thing. They also can, you can vote by mail. You can download an absentee ballot as we speak and fill it out and send it in. You should do that by November 1st. It should be I think it needs to be postmarked that week, I believe. But there are a lot of opportunities for people to vote and to vote early. And it is true. I think our turnout will be significant.
What about the repeated and unsubstantiated claims by Donald Trump that this election is going to be rigged, that there's massive voter fraud, and those are his words?
Well, I think there's going to be massive voters who will vote. And perhaps Mr. Trump will interpret their choices as fraudulent, but I don't think that that is our standard for measuring voter participation.
We just recently talked to the Board of Elections, and they said, look, we're back to the paper ballot. I mean, are you hearing from constituents that, well, that makes me feel better, that we're back to, a
I'm not one of them those people who had any problems with the way we've been voting over the years. I think the biggest challenge is getting those results in and making sure that they're accurate. I think the claims of voter fraud have been wildly exaggerated. I'm not sure we've had any documentation of that happening around here, and very few actual documented examples of that happening anywhere. Mr. Trump, I am afraid, has lost it, if you ask me. I mean, lost his well, in a variety of ways. But it's regrettable, and I think he has denigrated democracy and our process for having a conversation, how we treat people with respect, how we welcome people who are not like us, how we deal with things we wish didn't happen to us. And I think in particular how the atmosphere of hate that he has encouraged, I think is very damaging and scary. And I think it's very regrettable that we're in this situation. I've said, I don't know how people teach their children about democracy and about the voting and election process, seeing such an extremist out there. It's really regrettable. We have never had, if you ask me, such a disreputable candidate garnering such national attention. Again, this is just me. I suspect my colleagues would agree with me. It's very sad, and it's quite demoralizing to anyone who cares about this country. Because, the rest of the world is watching us. We tend to forget that. And people in leadership roles, I'm very sensitive to this. People in leadership roles, we are judged by what we say. And just saying that abusive behavior is just locker room talk, that abusive behavior was just sort of our treatment of people from other countries that you don't like is just, a bad day, is not acceptable for someone in a leadership position or the subject of a lot of press attention. It's inappropriate. Public figures should be held to a higher standard.
Getting back to a more local issue, on the FAA, they were taking comment up until October 15th, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Do you have faith that they will take what they're hearing from local citizens seriously? I mean, they've said in the past they really do need to narrow this flightway. There are a number of considerations, not just the volume of air traffic, but also safety. I think some of the 9/11 issues factor into this, and having a predictable flyway in, et cetera.
Well, I've lived here for over 30 years, and we've seen these flight paths adjust over the years, which we understand, and we respect all that. But, we weren't even represented in the group that was making recommendations on this, which is surprising and disappointing. So will the feds listen to us? Well, we'll see. But if we don't don't raise these issues, our voices won't be heard at all. And I'm very confident that our members of Congress will continue to push this issue for us. I suspect there's no easy solution. I get that, and we all get that. But, there have really disruptive noise patterns over residential neighborhoods are a genuine problem. There's no question about that.
On an issue down to earth, the Bethesda Downtown Plan, you have 100 people signed up, 101 people signed up?
Something like that, yeah.
What do you expect?
Well, I never know what people are going to say at a public hearing. I suspect we're going to hear from a lot of property owners I also suspect we'll hear from a good collection of neighbors. I have not looked at the list yet, with diverse points of view about just about everything. And we have been receiving emails from people for months on the Bethesda plan about various elements of it. We're not going to take the plan up at least until after Thanksgiving. So there's a long way to go before we start making decisions about how we feel about the testimony and how it jives with our overall objectives for development and growth, affordable housing, protection of green space, all that sort of thing.
When you say "we," do you mean the planning commission or the planning
Council.
housing?
Well, the
council?
committee won't take this up until after Thanksgiving, and hopefully we'll get through the Bethesda plan before we do the budget. That's the best I can say at this point. We haven't scheduled that all out. I don't know how many work sessions it will take and the like, but it will be a while before the full council gets to the Bethesda plan. Probably not until February at the earliest, I would think. So, yeah, the great thing about Montgomery County is, and the way we work is we continue to listen to people's concerns as we work through plans. We're doing that with Littonsville as we speak. That's the plan that we will be taking up in committee on the 7th of November. And so that's ahead of Bethesda in terms of just work program.
Have there been any updates on the bus depot relocation?
No,
Haven't heard anything.
no, we're awaiting the county executive's recommendations on that.
And the Avery Road Treatment Center is on the agenda tomorrow. Can you tell us and tell the public what's happening with that site?
Well, what is before us is really a decision to how the county's going to contract out services out there. So it's a transfer basically of the contract to another provider.
So the property is not changing
Property
hands?
is, I'm not sure if is the property changing hands? I don't believe it is.
It's a public-private partnership.
Well, it's an agreement between the players, but I'm not sure of the details on that. But basically, not a lot is really going to change, except the provision of who's going to provide the services.
Very good. And back to the election, term limits is a hot topic.
Oh, yeah, that's another one. Interesting. The Charter Review Commission has done a fair amount of work on this subject, and its chair has just compiled a great list of resources on the issue of term limits. I think it's regrettable that it's on the ballot. Frankly, I think it's a personal attack on the sitting council. Because the terminology that I hear from its prime sponsor is, we've increased taxes, we've done work on protected the environment, we've done a variety of adopted a variety of very progressive type policies that don't sit well with certain people. I understand that, but that's my view. Of what the underlying rationale for this is. My view is there are term limits, which is every 4 years. Whether or not I'm allowed to serve another term is decided by the community. And some of us have been lucky enough to have been reelected over the course of time. Others of us have not. A number of, usually in each election, an incumbent is not successful. That has always been the case here in Montgomery County. So to suggest that this sort of opens up the playing field, I think is mistaken. I don't think it particularly does. One of the changes that will be going into effect will also be our public financing law, which will make candidates less dependent on private money to run a campaign if they satisfy the basic criteria. You don't have to I don't know if it will reduce the cost of campaigns, but it will certainly support candidates who can't raise that much money. And so we'll see how that all works out. But I don't think I don't think term limits is, this legislation is necessary or appropriate. And as I said, I do believe it's deliberately targeted at this particular group of individuals. Of course, if it succeeds as proposed, our community will have a brand-new county council in 2018 because 5 of us, even if we chose to run again, are precluded from doing that. Of course, the county executive has already indicated he isn't going to run again. He's been saying that for years now. He seems to really mean it this time around.
How about you?
Huh?
How about you? If question B fails, will you run again?
We'll see.
And since Mr. Leggett has made clear this time that he's not running for reelection,
We'll
will
see.
you be filing for county executive?
We'll see.
Is that a job you've been interested in?
It's an interesting position to have. I have been really privileged to get to do something I really love, which is serving the community at this really kind of grassroots level on the county council. I don't know what my next steps will be.
Would you want to work in the Clinton administration if she's elected?
Well, let's see, I'd like to be a Secretary of State, or we'll see what happens. The other thing about, there are 2 term limit questions on the ballot, though. One is B, which we strongly disapprove of here on the county council. The other one is C, which we strongly approve of, which would make it clear that for the purposes of a term, it's defined as 2 years or more as a member of the county council. Otherwise, someone who could have been in office for less than a year could have been precluded from having a full term, second or third term, which would be unfortunate, we think. Obviously, it would directly apply to Councilmember Navarro. So we hope that you will write all about this and get that word out so that the community understands these are important issues. And that's the news,
There's a lot of it.
I think.
One last thing, I'm sorry. We had an escape of 3 juveniles. They were found relatively quickly. 2, I think, police found, and this was from noise, by the way, over the weekend. One of the juveniles was apprehended because a ride-on bus operator recognized because an alert had been sent out to ride on. Can you speak to that?
Well, my congratulations to the ride-on operator who was focusing on that. You know, just as a reminder, we're all a community. We all need to support each other. We have great folks who work for Montgomery County. They're on top of things, and this is a good example of that. Okay, thanks.